Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up later in the show, we'll visit the Electrifying Minnesota exhibit in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. But first, Matt Olien gets to sit down with a special guest.
Hello, and my guest today is Kayla Pridmore with the Northern Plains Sustainable Agriculture Society. Welcome, Kayla. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
First off, just maybe tell folks about yourself, your background, where you're from originally.
Yeah, so I have kind of an unusual North Dakota story anyway. I was born in Hawaii on a coffee farm. So I was used to running around outside and playing all year round. And then I found myself here. My family is from north of Moorhead, and I really wanted to farm. So I went to college, studied environmental science, got really into that, really started learning about climate change, the effects on soil health, and realized that farming was really a way to confront that, to be a part of the solution. So I moved here. The day I graduated from college, I packed up and moved to the first CSA farm that served the Fargo-Moorhead area, worked there for one season, and started my own vegetable farm.
And where's your vegetable farm at?
Just north of Moorhead.
So kind of where your parents grew up?
Yep, on my grandparents' land.
Great. What do you grow there? Tell us about it.
Well, garlic is my favorite crop. A lot of garlic. Garlic is good fun because there are so many varieties. We only see one in the grocery store usually. It's mostly grown in China or Argentina, but here we can grow what's called hardneck varieties, which mostly came out of Russia after the Soviet Union fell. All these agronomists went and collected all these incredible varieties of garlic. So I like playing with garlic.
Do you have other things you grow as well, or is that your...
Pretty much every other vegetable.
Okay, good. Northern Plains Sustainable Agriculture Society, you're a part of that.
Absolutely.
Tell us what it is.
So Northern Plains Sustainable Agriculture Society is a 40-year-old institution in the Northern Plains. It was started in North Dakota, 1979, by really the originators of organic farming in our region. A bunch of folks got together, realized that they were kind of pioneers and that they could be a peer learning group together. So that's how they started. And then we've worn a lot of hats over the years. So in those early days, it was really hard to find a market for organic grains. There weren't organic co-ops, that sort of thing. So finding markets, since then we've dabbled in seed breeding. We put on conferences, field days, work days, connect people to mentors, do a lot of educational efforts.
I suppose in those early years, Kayla, it's getting the public over that hump of, I'm not sure about this, because it's not what they're used to. Is that part of the growing process?
Definitely, and just connecting the markets, you know, because there are people, I think there's always been people who want to eat well and know where their food are coming from, but just finding the connections between grower and consumer.
How many members do you have in the society, and where are they all kind of scattered about and located?
So we have 250-ish members, so we're across the Northern Plains. That means mostly North and South Dakota. A lot of people in Western Minnesota as well.
Do you have meetings and keep in touch and share ideas and things like that?
Yeah, so we're always talking to our members. I get phone calls every day. We send out a newsletter quarterly. We also send out emails with upcoming events, research opportunities, that sort of thing. And then every winter, we have what was called the Winter Conference. Now we call it the Food and Farming Conference. We just moved up here to Fargo from Aberdeen, South Dakota last year. And that's really our big event of the year.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit here. What's the difference between your group and, say, traditional farming methods, if you can explain that?
Yeah, so that was a big part of what we did in our early days, was like defining what that difference was. There weren't organic standards for the most part, and Northern Plains was a big part of defining those standards in North Dakota and nationally. It wasn't until 1999 that there were national organic standards, and that is kind of roughly defined as not using synthetic inputs, so using all natural inputs on your farm or ranch. Really, a lot of different types of production methods can be certified as organic.
And what are the cost differences between going organic or not going organic for the producer, I mean?
That can vary a lot. It can be a tough couple of first years, especially it takes 3 years to transition. So there's what's known as the transition period, where you're probably paying more to produce, but not getting that higher cost, that higher price for your product.
do farmers go out of business then? Does that, they're just not able to get things going off the ground and,
There's a lot of
yeah,
support. There's federal
okay, good,
support.
good.
There's grants you can apply for. There's organizations like ours that try and kind of help people bridge that gap.
Mhm.
There's also marketing organizations. There's a lot of people invested in people going organic
Good.
because the market is growing so much. So,
Okay.
no.
When did consumers really, did you notice, start demanding more of their food? You talk about knowing where it's from.
Mhm.
There's a lot of big movement with that today. Can you talk about that for me?
Yeah, well, I know just since I've moved to Fargo, locally, that's definitely been the case. We've seen the explosion of the Red River Market. When I first started going to the Red River Market as a farmer, I think there were 4 or 5 of us just on a side street downtown, and now you can see it's like the biggest event of the summer every weekend. And I think that is in large part to people demanding good food, knowing their farmer. Those relationships are important to people.
And is that really your best venue where you sell your wares, the Red River Market, or
The,
how do you market your farm?
the Red River Market is very important to me financially. There's also the Prairie Roots Food Co-op um, and CSAs, which means direct marketing to people with a box of food every week, whatever's in season.
You guys have a film you're going to be showing soon, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that, where it's going to be, what it's about, that kind of thing.
So we're actually showing it in 2 places. We'll be in Aberdeen, South Dakota on January 11th, and here in Fargo on the 12th, the next day. So this is a really exciting film, Dreaming of a Better World, really about some of those original pioneers of the organic movement, including several of our members. So we'll see really familiar faces, some North Dakotans, Fred Kirschman and Teresa Podol are big faces in this movie, and it's really a moving film. I was sitting in my office shedding some tears, and I'm excited to experience this as a community, really learning about what it takes to make that transition, and then the real work that goes into learning more, refining your operation, becoming really amazing stewards of your land.
And where are the venues again, in Aberdeen and Fargo?
Aberdeen at the Capitol Theater.
Sure.
And Fargo at the Fargo Theater
Okay.
at 2 o'clock.
Okay, good. Who produced the film? Like, how did you guys get contacted about this? And is it funded by the society, or?
It's not.
Okay.
It was an independent filmmaker, a documentarian, just kind of caught word of this kind of amazing family, the Vetters. And they are longtime sponsors of the conference, have won our stewardship awards. So it was kind of just in the ethos, and we picked it out as a great movie. Last year, we showed another movie to kick off our conference, so it's kind of becoming a tradition.
Can you talk about the 40-year anniversary coming up of, or maybe it already has been, of the Prairie Festival? We were talking about that before we went on the air.
So the Prairie Festival is a festival that happens in Salina, Kansas, that celebrates perennial grains. So most things that we plant in our gardens and farms are annuals. So that leaves the soil bare as soon as they die. So there's an effort to perennialize farming. And this will be featured at our conference as well, because this means that there will always be roots in the soil, which improves soil quality, water quality, is really a great thing all around.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the programs that you have with the society, the magazine, The Germinator. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so The Germinator is put out quarterly. We have an amazing, amazing editor who works in South Dakota. So she does great work going around to many of our farmer members, interviewing them about their operation. We really get an inside view into people's farms, as well as just kind of what's going on in the region generally. We also have a poet laureate of our organization, Terry Jacobson, and we feature several of his poems in each of the Germinator as well, which is really fun.
How many people work on that magazine? Because magazines are hard to produce.
Oh, it's mostly just Heidi. She's
wow.
incredible. You know, we try to pitch in, but she's doing it all.
Okay. What's the Farm Breeding Club?
The Farm Breeding Club is one of our, I mentioned that we got into seed breeding. So the Farm Breeding Club is one of our jewels of our organization. So, for example, wheat is really hard to grow in organic systems if you're using the kind of wheat that sort of major seed breeders pump out. So wheat was the first thing that the Farm Breeding Club worked on, to breed wheat seeds on farms in the region so that it would be local.
Easier.
Yeah, so that, because wheat wants to grow in organic systems tall and quickly so that it can shade out weeds, not have as much competition. So to breed it on farms means to breed it for our very local conditions and for organic conditions. So the work of the Farm Breeder Club is to create seeds that will work best here.
Okay. Because there's differences, right? I mean, like you said, some things are hard to grow organically and some are easier to grow, correct?
Yep, so to breed our own seed is kind of to take control and select for the things that make it easier to grow organically.
Now, you said the big food and farming conference is coming up. Tell us about that and where it's going to be and speakers and all kinds of things.
Yep, so we'll be at the Holiday Inn here in Fargo. This is our second year in Fargo. It's January 23rd through the 26th. And like you mentioned, this is our 40th anniversary. So we always have a great array of speakers. We go everything from super, super detail-oriented planting dates, varieties, how to make your tractor work just right for rolling over cover crops and that sort of thing, to bigger philosophical questions, like how do we incorporate like faith into our operations, or what is the role of a sort of moral center in farming and that sort of thing.
Mhm. Was this past year, I mean, we hear in the news, tariffs and farmers struggling and the October snowstorm.
Mhm.
How does that impact the members of your society as well? What's the last year been like weather-wise and crop-wise?
Yeah, it was a tough year for everybody. I think we're seeing a lot more weather. It was wet and people had to delay planting. And that's kind of the strength of our organization, is that we can help each other, and we can also learn about how to kind of maneuver through changing weather, changing markets, share best practices, and what it's going to look like farming in the future is kind of up to us and how we can help each other.
But things like the tariffs, that doesn't impact you quite as
The
much, does it?
tariffs-
That's more of a farm bill, farm program thing, right?
Yeah, the tariffs are not as much of a big deal for organic farmers, even organic grain farmers.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your college scholarship funds that you have?
Yeah, so we have $1,000 available to any student who is either a member or the child of a member of Northern Plains. So you can always become a member and then apply. So I would absolutely recommend that folks apply. Our last scholarship winner is actually one of our speakers at the conference this year, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about the research he's been doing at NDSU.
And then one more program, the My Neighbor's Acre Fund.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one is really close to my heart. I think this really gets to who we are as an organization. The idea behind Neighbor's Acre is that we can help each other by donating the profits from 1 acre to a farmer who might be in some sort of need. It could be sickness, fire, a terrible weather event. So people can write in. They don't need to explain what happened, just that they would like to tap into this fund. And we'll write them a check. No obligation, no interest. We ask that if they can replenish the fund, that they do that when they can.
Have you used this fund to help people?
Yep,
It's come in
absolutely.
handy, yeah?
Mhm, Yep.
Okay. How important, Kayla, are pollinators for the gardens and the farms?
Of course, pollinators are everything. We wouldn't eat without them. We really need to start farming and planting with pollinators in mind. We have several programs during the conference that will speak to this, and some for children, and it's going to be really good fun.
Mhm. So right now we're in winter. Tell me about your year then at your operation. Kind of take me through how it goes from the planting to the growing and the harvesting.
Well,
What's a typical year for you like, Kayla?
right now is a really exciting time of year because the seed catalogs are coming in. So I get to cover myself in magazines and pick out the varieties that I'd like to grow. Call up people like Teresa Podol, who develops vegetable seeds for this region, find out what's new and what she'll have. So it's all about seed planning right now. Then in a couple months, we'll start well, I guess more than a couple months, unfortunately.
I don't think you'll be planting in February.
We'll be starting seeds inside usually the beginning of March. So the season really goes from March to November in terms of real work getting into the dirt. So.
Tell me about, you mentioned Teresa Podol, and I believe we've had her in a documentary before here at Prairie Public. Tell us about some specific members out there of your society and some really interesting things that they're doing, if there's some real success stories out there.
Yeah, so we have a lot of really great members. We just this past summer had a field day at Charlie Johnson's farm. He's also the winner of the Farmer of the Year from the Moses Organic Institute in Wisconsin. So just a real amazing farmer and a real mentor. He's done amazing things to kind of bring people into his organization, show them what works, and really taken them under his wing to create more farmers and more effective farmers.
How about some others besides Charlie?
Oh, goodness.
Well, Teresa, of course. She's been
Teresa,
at it a
of
while,
course.
hasn't she?
Yes, she has, and she's actually been a part of our organization basically since the beginning. She's served as executive director, and yeah, she grows mostly vegetable seeds, garlic, that are specific to this location, which is very important.
Are these mostly, Kayla, family operations? Is that typically what we see?
Yep, so most of our farmer members are family-sized, we call them. So you'll see generations of the family working on these farms.
Where do you see sustainable agriculture, let's say 5 to 10 years down the road? Are we going to continue to see this push toward organic farming and sustainable agriculture?
I think so. I think there's definitely consumer demand. We're seeing growth every year in the organic market. And I think it's also just going to become necessary. The more we learn about things like pollinators and soil health and how integral it is to our environmental and also human health, there's going to be more demand for it. And it's just going to be the way that we kind of have to farm.
Yeah. We always hear in the news sometimes about, bad chemicals that got into food or water or things like that. When did people start kind of figuring that out too, that maybe that's not the best thing, chemicals in farming and things like that? And a lot of farmers have gotten away from it, of course.
Yeah. I always think of Silent Spring as sort of like the beginning of that movement. She predicted things. Rachel Carson predicted things like the pesticide treadmill for land, and farmers kind of become dependent on pesticides and herbicides, and it kind of makes things worse as bugs become super bugs and weeds become super weeds as they develop resistance to these chemicals.
How are those things regulated? Are they regulated or not these days?
I can't. I'm not much of an expert
on
that.
You're not going to use them, right? You're not going to use them.
Nope.
Right. What are the big benefits to organic farming and sustainable agriculture? If you could nail down like 2 or 3 as we get close to wrapping up.
I guess water quality, definitely. We're not seeing those chemicals in the water, but we're also not losing soil and silting up our rivers and that sort of thing. I think human health, definitely. Both for the farmers and the applicators of these pesticides, but also for the rural communities that these farms surround.
That's a good start. Got about a minute left, Kayla. Again, tell us when the film will be airing and what venues in Aberdeen and Fargo, and then also when the Food and Farming Conference is coming.
Yep, so January 11th at the Capitol Theater in Aberdeen, South Dakota at 2 o'clock. And then January 12th at the Fargo Theater at 2 o'clock, we'll be showing Dreaming of a Better World. And then on January 23rd through 26th, we'll be at the Holiday Inn in Fargo with our conference. Thursday is pre-conference longer workshops, and Friday and Saturday we kind of get into the meat of the conference.
And then how can people get involved or join? If they're interested in starting a farm, joining your society, how can they get a hold of you or someone?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, which is just npsas.org. Absolutely give us a call, send me an email. I love to get people connected.
Okay. Thanks, Kayla, for being on Prairie Pulse.
Thanks.
Stay tuned for more.
We take it for granted today, but electricity and power in rural Minnesota was not always reliable. A new traveling exhibit called Electrifying Minnesota is on display at the Becker County Museum in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. The exhibit offers visitors a peek into the past and information about how far technology has come.
This is the traveling exhibit from the Minnesota Historical Society, and this is Electrifying Minnesota.
In the exhibit, it talks about the history of our utility and what our utility has done for the community that owns their own utility, how they control their destiny when it comes to building power lines, building power plants, building distribution systems, and being engaged in the process to bring power to rural areas. We provide a lot of the historical material and equipment that's inside the Historical Museum here. We've got some pictures of our old generation facility from back in the early 1900s to the 1950s. And a lot of the old hardware we use, some of the tools that were used in the early days. And we just want to be a big partner with the Historical Society and tell our history about the public utilities here in Detroit Lakes. It's pretty storied and rich history.
As it happens with a lot of our traveling exhibits and exhibits that we put up here, as soon as people heard that we were having an electrical exhibit, people started just showing up with things. We have added in some Becker County elements to this, so we have our local element. We have a lot of telephones, and we have an early switchboard from our area that we've put on display as well. There is also an interactive component to this exhibit. So we've brought in snap circuits and generators that people can learn how generators work on a smaller scale. There's a lot of information about where our power comes from right here in Becker County and throughout the state of Minnesota.
Within Detroit Lakes, 1891 was the first year when E.G. Holmes started his first small generation plant. That's when electricity came to Detroit Lakes. The surrounding areas significantly after that, with the Rural Electrification Act in the 1940s and the start of the cooperatives. Communities about the size of Detroit Lakes, where they had interested people to bring generation in and start their own generation facilities, did that. A lot of other communities around us did the same thing, but we were islands. None of this was tied together. There were no transmission facilities at the time. Ottertail Power provided electricity in Fergus Falls. The local utility provided in Detroit Lakes and some of the surrounding lakes areas. And then after that, it would have been in the 30s when the Electrification Act started, and they started doing electrification in rural Minnesota. And then that even took on until into the late 1950s before a lot of areas in rural Minnesota became electrified.
We're all parents here at the museum, and we know that kids like to learn by touching things, so we always make sure that there's lots of interactive activities for kids and families. They're playing while they're learning, but hopefully they're taking these little tidbits home as knowledge.
In the mid-1970s, there was a controversial power line project scheduled to go through central Minnesota. It was bringing energy from a coal-fired power plant in Underwood, North Dakota, and taking it to a power station just outside of Buffalo, Minnesota. It was a very high-voltage, large project.
They wanted to run power lines through people's land that they were using as farmland. They were making a living off that land, and all of a sudden, the state wanted to take that land away from them and put power lines through.
Power companies proceeded, and when the construction crew started, the farmers said, "We've had enough. We're not going to put up with this. We're not going to let you build the power line." It got very, very contentious between the farmers and the construction crews. So I started in 1970 as a groundman and a security guard working nights to protect the construction equipment from the people who were protesting the lines. Both the utility companies and people, property owners now understand there's a better way to navigate through building power lines. Take a look at some of the tools and equipment used by the line crews back in the day, and think about the evolution of the line crew when they climbed everything by climbers and belts and hooks, we call them, to the bucket trucks we use today.
We did learn that there were a lot of line women as well. There's some information on our panels about the women who were forefront in getting the power to our area.
Oh, how far has electricity come? a long ways. If you think about the early generation facilities where we used coal as a heat source, now we're using renewable energy to bring power to the community of Detroit Lakes. And that's an exciting time to be involved with the change and evolution of our power supply. It's come a long ways in the last 100 years, and it's going to be amazing what it does in the next 20 or 25 years.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Post this week. And as always, thanks for watching.
Funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4, 2008. And by the members of Prairie Public.